Setsuko Winchester is a gifted artist, journalist, and a former National Public Radio producer and commentator. Her Freedom from Fear Tea-Bowl project features powerful photographic images that picture her handmade yellow tea bowls at World War II-era Japanese-American internment campsites and at other national sites throughout the country, including Franklin Delano Roosevelt Four Freedoms Park in New York, here at the Norman Rockwell Museum in the Four Freedoms Gallery, which is right behind us, and especially focusing on Norman Rockwell's Freedom from Fear painting from 1943, as well as on the National Mall in Washington, D.C.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah, in Los Angeles. And we were talking about internment, and I said, what do they teach about internment in California? And she said, oh, you know, my dear, it was a terrible thing, but the government had to do it to protect the Japanese people. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, you know, that's what they're teaching now. And I thought, I need to do something to get this story out, but I wanted to do it in a way that would be gentle and not hurtful, because World War II was a very important time. There was a lot of heroism. There's a lot of people who are proud. I didn't want to step on those kind of feelings. But I also realized that if I, as a Japanese American, kept quiet about this incident, I realized that it could easily happen to somebody else. It's right there. So that's when I started like pinching bowls like crazy, and I decided to pinch different tea bowls. I saw them as people, and I pinched them as families, so they're all glazed, like, you know, this is a family,
when you
mom,
say pinch,
dad,
you didn't
children.
do them on the wheel, right?
Yeah, I didn't do it on the wheel. I hand pinch because I like the irregularity. I like the fact that it's imperfect. And it's also based on the philosophy of tea. You know, the fact that you just take time to stop and have a cup of tea with somebody and just get to know each other. It's about appreciating humanity, that we're all imperfect, but it's lovely, you know. It's like cherry blossoms. No petal is exactly the same, but together they're just beautiful.
So you made 120?
Yeah. So I made 120 to symbolize the 120,000 people.
We packed them up in a big series of boxes and put them in the back of the Land Rover. And in, November, December 2015, we set out to do the 6 southern camps, beginning with the 2 in Arkansas, which are the most easterly, just on the
They're
west.
like 27 miles apart, and in the middle, 13 miles between Rower and Jerome, there's a museum now that was opened in 2012.
Why don't we look at the first picture? Tom, if you can turn to the first slide. This is the bowls in
Rower.
A muddy field in Rower.
Yeah, and this is where George Takei, the Star Trek person actor, was here first. And the next one is Jerome. That's
in both cases, we can perhaps flip between the two, is the only relic now is the chimney in the distance. You can see.
That's the chimney from the
also
hospital.
gives you the idea of the size. These were vast camps, and these 2, I think they had about 18,000 people in each, which made them the...
No.
14,000 together, was it? Made them essentially the 4th or 5th biggest city in Arkansas. Obviously Little Rock first, and this fairly soon thereafter.
Yeah, now they're private farms now, but when George Takei, I was just on with him, heard him talk recently. He said that it was a swamp. Yeah.
So we then continued the drive westwards. We crossed the rest of Arkansas. We crossed all of Texas, and we eventually came to western Arizona. This is in the floodplain of another river, the Colorado, and the camp is called Poston. That was a really big one. It was divided into 3.
Yeah, it was one of the largest
That was
camps.
about
That was
18,000 people.
Yeah, and it was called Roastin', Toastin', and Poston because it was divided into 3 camps. And,
so tell us a little about that and how we found it, because it was difficult to find at first, wasn't it?
This was actually put on an Indian reservation land because originally no states would take these people. They're like, we don't want them here. So they they put them on Indian land because, put them on Indian land. Yeah. So finally we went to the delicatessen called Woody's, and somebody said, "Oh, ask Woody. He's back in the refrigerator section." And so he came out and he said, "Oh, there's a clutch of palm trees. There's like one block that had been saved, and that's it." And now it's covered in fencing, and there was a little hole in the fence, so we managed to bring all the teapots through the hole, and then I arranged them in families, because I was imagining, the families are just hanging out, so they're all glazed separately, and so so that's Poston.
And after that, we crossed the Colorado into Southern California. Yeah. And this is now in the southeastern Sierra Mountains. In fact, on the right-hand side of the picture, out of sight, is Mount Whitney. And this is a valley, Death Valley is off to the left. And they've put up a watchtower, they've reconstructed it. This is just outside the perimeter fence. Inside is a fairly sophisticated National Park Service visitor center. But as Setsuko notes, it's an unfunded mandate, and so often it's closed down and the staff are on furlough. But it's a brave attempt by the National Park Service to memorialize, one, this is Manzanar, where Farewell from Manzanar was written. And as you can see, a fairly bleak countryside, although surrounded by rather spectacular mountains. How many were here, do you think? It was fairly big. There were two in California, but the other one has a very sinister implication to it, and we'll get to talk about that later. So I had to give a lecture near here in Pasadena, so after doing that and seeing this site, we turned around and went back to Arizona, because the next Arizonan camp was actually a very difficult one to visit. And Setsuko will tell us about that, and you'll perhaps, Tom, show us that picture, right?
The day before we were headed here, we were at Caltech because he had to give a talk, and I had CNN on, and Donald Trump was on television saying FDR was a really great president. We admire him. He used internment for the Japanese people, and I think it could be a solution for the Muslim problem. And I just thought, oh my God, I really need to get this project done really quickly. Yeah,
lead in your pencil,
and then the next day we were going to Manzanar. So, after Manzanar, which I have to say is one of the best internment camp in terms of the National Park Service. It's beautifully done. If people get a chance to go there, Death Valley is gorgeous. There's beautiful, breathtaking mountains and countryside. So I would suggest going there. Poston is on.
This is Gila River.
Gila River is on sovereign Indian land. So this is the hardest site to get to. You normally have to have a 3-month process. It's like trying to get a visa to India or something like that. But they expedited the process for us, so we were able to get on there. But
It's remarkably helpful man.
Paul Shorthair.
Paul Shorthair, yes.
He was amazing, and I arranged these to mimic the arch, the memorial arch at the top of the hill. That was for the soldiers who died. But there's actually a lot of remains here. There was actually a grave for a dog named Cookie, who just lived there, because most people had to leave their pets behind. You weren't allowed to bring any animals. So Cookie was this beloved, I think very healing element in the camp. You could tell he was very loved. So, but things like that remain there. This had two other camps, Butte and this one. So, yeah.
So then we set out from there, heading back east, and we passed Four Corners, where Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico join, and then over past Durango, over the Rocky Mountains, come into the rain shadow into eastern Colorado. And this was a camp known either as Granada or Amache. This was the state which, if you remember, the then governor, Ralph Carr, was very sympathetic to the Japanese who were being excluded from the far west and said, well, we certainly here in Colorado will welcome them. And it's interestingly topical because just 2 days ago in Colorado, they were debating all manner of the immigration policies of the state. And a man, I forget his name, rather lengthy Hispanic name, stood up and made a speech vituperatively anti-immigrant and said we should reopen internment camps in Colorado. We set out again, this time instead of heading south towards Arkansas, we head north towards Minnesota and hit the first camp in early May, and that's Heart Mountain in Wyoming, which is just near the town of Cody. So Tom, if we can go to the next there. As you can see, very bleak, and it was a very bleak day as well. And Heart Mountain itself, which is a very unusual shaped, heart-shaped mountain, off to the left here, you couldn't see because of the fires. Do you remember there were the oil fires that broke out in central Alberta when all the winds were coming from the north and they blew smoke down? Well, that is smoke from Canada, which is
yeah,
changed.
Ironically, we were able to see Heart Mountain the day before because I had come to check out the site and where I wanted to put the bowls. And then we came and you couldn't see the mountain at all. But I also chose images that weren't stereotypical of the spot because everybody takes it in front of Heart Mountain. So this actually is one of the most substantial buildings that were left and it has been saved. So that was the hospital chimney. And so this Heart Mountain, it's a private museum. It's not run by the National Park Service, but it's one of the best little museums. Has amazing staff. The history there is fantastic. And I just love them. I still call them. I think the scholarship there is amazing, and they're one of the people who are really trying to get this story out about America. This is American history. It's not Japanese history. It's not minority history. This happened in America.
So then we headed west from there and over through Montana and eventually fetched up in southern Idaho in potato country. And that is the picture which Anastasia very cleverly, I think, put in the lead picture in Berkshire Magazine, this excellent magazine. That is it's called Minidoka. It is run, like Manzanar, by the National Park Service. There is a small but quite good interpretative center. There's an old root cellar, which is actually in the distance in that picture.
Well, it's actually not run. There are no people there.
They're
just
there,
little kiosks that you can read, but it's basically empty. Most of the they're run by a national park nearby, where it's a park, and then they'll run over into to the internment site to help. But yeah, I just love, this is one of my favorite images because a storm was coming and I knew I had to get this shot really quickly because we had to leave. I didn't have another day. And so I quickly took the picture, and it sort of made me, it's the image that illustrates how I felt about this storm coming to America, So I was really pleased that the photo editor at Berkshire Magazine chose that.
It does remind me, though, what an immensely long line 120 bowls made. I often wish you made just 20. It would be easier to put them down.
We'll make a segregated unit of just Japanese soldiers. So question number 27 and 28 literally tore the camps apart, separated mother from father, sister, brother, because, as you can see, the question 27, are you willing to serve in the armed forces of the United States on combat duty wherever ordered? And some people said yes. A lot of people said yes, of course. But some people said yes, as soon as you let me out of here and go back to my house, or as soon as I step out of the gates and I'm free, as a free citizen, as long as I'm in prison, to ask me to go fight is a little much. And so even if it was a yes and you put a qualification, that was seen as a no. So you had one no. Question 28, will you forswear unqualified allegiance to the United States of America and faithfully defend the United States from any or all attack, and forswear allegiance and obedience to the Japanese emperor? And a lot of them said, well, I'm an American, I've never been to Japan, I don't speak Japanese, and he's not my emperor. So they were like, I'm, you know, yes to the first one, but the second one, if I say yes, is that saying that I'm loyal to the emperor? You know, it was, they thought it was a trick question. They were trying to, you know, trick them to say that they were loyal. So, you know, a lot of people wrote no. So anybody who had two no's were called the no-no boys.
And they were sent, if you go back to the previous picture now.
Yeah, they were sent to Tule Lake. And that's the jail within the camp. That's Castle Rock, and the camp goes on and on. But that was where all the, and they have jail cells about that big, and they would have like 25 adults in them, and we were there. You'll see a group of school children. The National Park Service was actually giving a talk, and they would go in with a group of 10, and we all stood in the cell, and we were pretty crowded in, and they said, well, there were 25 people in here. So they would take turns sleeping, supposedly, like on the ground, some standing, and they were in there for you know, a long time.
And those buildings in the background are part of the original camp. This is just a tiny portion of the camp, which extends, sometimes on their free days, they could go up to Castle Rock, which is the outcrop behind, but it's a gigantic camp, but this is the most notorious part. Yeah. And because there were, quote, troublemakers in it, it was surrounded by tanks and double strands of barbed wire and things. It was a very menacing place. So we left that, headed back now, we turned around just as we had in Manzanar, headed back eastwards to the last of the 10 camps, and that should be the next after the, yes, this one.
So this is Topaz.
In Utah.
And I arranged this in this shape because Block 29 is where the church was. There were 3 churches. What most people don't realize is that a lot of the Japanese Americans, when they immigrated to the United States, converted to Christianity. So a lot of them were Christian. So I guess race trumped religion. It didn't matter if you were Christian. You still had to go. So this Topaz also has a beautiful museum, but it doesn't have any information in it. It's kind of strange. It's one of the longest established private museums. It's not part of the National Park Service, but it's kind of a mystery why there's no information in there. This is an important park because this is where Mine Okubo was. Mine Okubo is a very famous artist who probably did the first graphic novel of a concentration camp, and it's called Citizen 13660, and it's great. It's a graphic novel. I think it's children,
still
adults.
In print,
yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great way to learn about what happened on the camps.
After this, we then, so we've done with the 10 camps, and we now had to do, and slightly out of order, but Setsi will describe them, put the bowls in 5 important places, and I think places that are important to stories. So Tom, maybe you can show us the first of these. This is the southern end of Roosevelt Island in New York. This is
January of 2016. Yeah. I'm a New Yorker. I was born in New York. I always love this place. I think it's really beautiful. It's right in the middle of the East River, and I go running over to the river, and I could see this from where I run. And I thought, I want to bring my T-bowls there, freedom from fear. I want to say, this is what you were afraid of, me.
So this is four freedoms.
So at the very end is a large bust of FDR, and on the other side are the 4 freedoms carved in marble. So this is my...
So the next one?
So the next place I took it to, yeah, those were I'm a New Yorker, and I'm also in Massachusetts. And I remember the first time I came here, and I went to the Four Freedoms Rotunda, and I looked at that picture, and I thought, wow, you know, freedom from fear. That's what freedom from fear looks like. And I thought, well, I guess I wasn't included in those protections. Actually, not in any of them. Freedom of speech, freedom of, you know, religion, freedom of want or fear. And also, I wanted to focus on one bold, say, you know, they were individuals, although they were called Yellow Peril, which is why I painted them all yellow.
But as you so eloquently said just now, you are what they were afraid of.
Yeah, and that I'm not that scary. I hope you don't think so. Yeah. Tom. And then the next one, I took them to the Supreme Court because 4 cases went to the Supreme Court. The most important is Fred Korematsu. He tested Executive Order 9066. There was Gordon Hirabayashi, Mitsue Endo, which actually that was found unconstitutional to imprison a loyal American, you know, who had done nothing wrong. She was a citizen. One was Executive Order 9066 was military necessity, so they sort of kept it that way. And then the other one was the curfew and the travel ban. So the other 3 were found constitutional, but later the Japanese American archivists, when the Freedom of Information Act, they started opening the archives, and she went through some of FDR's papers and the administration's papers, and they found out that the administration had all the information to prove their innocence, but they had kept it secret. So that's why. So now, because of, I'm not a lawyer, but like quorum nobis, or I don't.
Quorum nobis.
Yeah. Supposedly those rulings were not legal because all the evidence was
suppressed.
Was suppressed.
So let's have a look at the next one.
So. Oh, and actually, I have a friend on the Supreme Court who helped me, because otherwise there's so much security there, it would have been impossible to get that done. So,
and he lives in Massachusetts as well. It's Stephen Breyer.
Yeah, Stephen Breyer. Yeah, Stephen Breyer is a good friend, and he actually wrote about internment, saying that it was wrong. And he, you know, he's so kind, because when I first said, you know, I would love to bring my T-bowls to the steps of the Supreme Court, he said, oh, I don't see why not. And then he asked, and he said, you know, you should never ask, because whenever you ask the Supreme Court something, they always say no. So then he said, I have an idea. You know, I wrote about Korematsu. We could say that you're writing an article about me, and you could lay down the T-bowls, and then I'll get out of the picture. You know, and we could pretend that you're and then his staff was like, no, you're not getting involved in any of this. Yeah. So, but they said, we'll let you come and take the picture. So, you know, it's thanks to Stephen Breyer for this. Otherwise,
so this is also in Washington. This is the memorial. You can see it's a crane wrapped in barbed wire.
This is the Japanese American Memorial to Patriotism, and it has all the camps and how many people were in each camp. You could see Tule Lake there, that's the Japanese crane wrapped up in barbed wire.
And I find this quite moving, because carved in the marble just behind where Setsu was standing to take the photograph are the words, "Here we admit a wrong." So it's the American government saying, we made a mistake, we did something terrible. But as Setsu rightly points out, this is a neglected park, things in it don't work. Homeless people sleep there.
Yeah.
It's very much overlooked. So here we admit a wrong.
It's right by Union Station, and it's the favorite resting spot of homeless people. Because nobody visits there, so you could take a nice nap in quiet. Yeah.
And is there a final one now, Tom, or is that the last one? No, there we are. This is.
But you know, speaking of the 442nd, was the segregated Japanese unit. They were the most decorated military
more Purple Hearts than any other
Yeah, more
unit.
Purple Hearts, silver, of any unit of its size in American military history. So,
And yet when they came back home, they didn't have homes. They came back to the internment camps, which is a terrible irony. So the last one, which is the Hyde Park Museum.
Well, they also couldn't get jobs, and they couldn't rent housing. Yeah, and then after this is the FDR Library. When they found out about my project, the director Paul Sparrow invited me to come take a site-specific image at the museum, and he said I could take it anywhere I want to. And I walked all around the museum. And he had said something about Freedom Court. And I said, where's the Freedom Court? And the curator said, oh, that's outside. So I said, let's go out there. And I just knew it because it said freedom from fear. And, it's Freedom Court. And my project is about freedom. And had a bust of FDR. And the sculpture at the end is actually cut out of a man and a woman cut out of the Berlin Wall, and it's a sculpture done by a woman named Edwina Sands, and she is the great granddaughter of Churchill, of Winston Churchill, and she's also a descendant of the Sands family that gives the name to the town that I live in now, which is Sandusfield. The Sands family is her family. So now Edwina and I are best friends. She just said, "Oh, I'm in town. Come for a buffet." I missed it. Yes. The other day. But anyway, so when I got there, I thought, oh, how should I arrange my bowls? And basically, some people think it's a cross, but it's actually supposed to be a yellow shadow of a man. So it's supposed to be a shadow of the men, but it's this yellow peril, and it's over like FDR is looking over it.
So that essentially then is the 15 images, and if we go to the last image, which I think is a summary image,